What's up, my wizards? Deb from the place with the decks. In fact, there's one right here, it turns out. I've been working on this one sort of in secret for the last week or so, testing it and doing some things. And turns out I think it's actually awesome. This is Abzan Elves, and it's good. You'll shortly see that. I want to go ahead and get to this, because there's some things to talk about, and I think the deck is better than I wanted it to even be at first. I wanted it to be good. So let's hit it. 26 creatures in the deck, 24 of which are elves. Start wondering to yourself what those two creatures might be. But anyway, 3 copies to begin things of Gnarlroot Trapper, the only 1-drop in the entire deck, which is kind of not like an elves deck. But again, we're not playing any Theros block like at all in this deck, so we can't play Mystic. For the next couple of months you can, so take advantage of that. Trapper, in testing for this deck, I've actually used his second ability like more than his first ability. Obviously, you can use his first ability to get a Nissa on the second turn. That's pretty cool. It's actually really, really cool. People play Nissa second and third turn. Turns out, kind of all the time. And that Death Touch ability is just, it's absolutely no joke. I've used that ability more in testing than I have his first ability. No lie. Very, very good card, it turns out. But maybe, that being said, one of the worst elves in the deck. But needed for that Death Touch ability. Very good. On to the 2-drops, 4 copies of Leaf Gilder. Yeah, the 2 mana, 2 power actually is awesome. Helps ramp us into things. We are playing things at the top of the curve at 4 mana, so you know, this helps us ramp into, say, Collected Company or Dwynen, something like that. So important to have this, and especially because it's, you know, a bear, 2 mana, 2 power, and can ramp. I think I do want to play this card in this deck. 4 copies, Dwynen's Elite. Now, here's the thing. We're not playing a hell of a lot of 1-drops, so Dwynen's Elite loses a little bit of value, but not all the value. It turns out that we don't have to play this on curve necessarily. Second turn we'll play a Leaf Gilder, third turn we can play this, you know, and then follow up and say a Shaman of the Pack, you know. We can Collected Company this into play a lot of the time and get that second elf too. So, like 90% of the time we can still get the second elf. It's just not going to happen second turn every single game, you know, but there are other options second turn than just this. So sometimes this will back up to the third turn, but that's usually okay, especially against other aggro decks where you're really just playing 2 blockers. Pretty good card here. And I do still want to play the 4 of, even though we're not playing that many 1-drop elves. And I'll reiterate once again that, especially a couple of turns later into the game, not necessarily the late game, but the mid game, this is still a very, very fine card. We're playing 3 copies of Elvish Visionary. I want it to be 4, but 3 is good, yeah. It's nice to be able to collect a company this into play and draw more cards, replace the company in your hand. And honestly, second turn, this isn't terrible, you know. Trades with a lot of the things that things like red aggro are playing, you know. A lot of red aggro creatures have just the 1 toughness, you know. Monastery Swiftspear is one of the only things we really have to worry about in the toughness department. So our 1/1 trades with 90% of the creatures in the deck that we have a lot of trouble with. And yeah, we do have a lot of trouble with red aggro, actually. They play a lot of removal that for just 1 or 2 mana says, you know, destroy target creature against our deck. For, you know, it's destroy target non-Dwynen creature, for lack of a better term. So, I mean, it's very, very nice to have something that A, replaces itself, gets you a little farther into your deck, card, you know, advantage is pretty good. So I like everything about Visionary as sort of a speed bump early game against some decks. And just against control, you know, this kind of card advantage or card selection is very, very good. 2 copies of Den Protector. This is the only non-elf creature in the deck. This started out as Abzan Warriors. And I had like Chief of the Edge in here, and I had some Bloodshed Rager too. I think that deck is viable, but not quite as solid as this deck, so I ended up going with this build, but kept Den Protector in. Den Protector is very, very good at helping us get our dudes back after removal. We can get into the Den Protector loop, but that is very few and far between that happens. But mostly, this will help us get back either, you know, key spells that we've used. The Collected Company is a big deal, it turns out, getting that back with a Den Protector. And helps us get back elves that we've lost. You know, another Shaman of the Pack, getting that out of your graveyard with this is just very, very, very good. So I still want to play Den Protector. Helps us recover a bit after mass removal and even after tons of spot removal. I like everything about Den Protector, and he gives us a little bit of a longer game too. So I have had nothing but good experiences testing this card in this deck. 2 copies of Nissa right here. Yeah, at least the 2 copies. I really wanted to play 3, but the deck list is extremely tight, it turns out, and really just only have the room for 2. But you got to play Nissa, right? I mean, again, another thing that gives us a little bit more of a long game, helps us get our drops early game, which is important for this deck, because we are slightly hungry, it turns out. We want to be able to do things like play a creature and Dromoka's Command the same turn, you know. There's a few things we want to do like that, you know. Collected Company and Dromoka's Command again. Dromoka's Command, very awesome. It helps us stay consistent and is a major late game threat that provides card advantage on top of all that. So, gotta play Nissa. Very good. For Shaman of the Pack, again, a must play. I want to play all 4 of this because it's often the finishing punch, you know. I talked about that last time I did an Elves video. The card is very good, and in this deck we have multiple ways of getting it out of our graveyard once it's in there for just maximum value, as many castings of the card as we can possibly get. We can get it off Collected Company as well, so I just don't see anything at all wrong with Shaman of the Pack. Now, there, you know, it's in shock range, you know, Wild Slash, things like that. It will die, and it will hardly ever resolve against certain decks, but that's because they respect it. The card is very dangerous and will often do at least 3 to 5 points of damage upon resolution, and it's a good body on top of that, so all 4 copies. 2 copies of Sylvan Messenger in the main deck, and there's more on the board, it turns out. Messenger, again, something else that helps us recover after, say, Languish and other mass removal, just our dudes got all blown away by, you know, random spot removal, things like that. Helps us, you know, recover after a lot of things. Let's say we had a slow early game, but we're still in the game. Messenger can help fill our hand up and just make us a threat again. So, I do like a lot of things about Messenger. I didn't want to play her the first time around, but now that I've had some testing with this deck, I really like Messenger a lot. Obviously, we can whiff on Den Protector occasionally, but I'm not that worried about that as we're playing 24 elves in the deck. I mean, we're most of the time going to get a grip full of dudes off of just this one guy. It is card advantage. And to finish off these creatures, 2 copies of Dwynen Gilt-Leaf Daen. You only need the 2 copies in the main. There's another one in the board in case you run across, say, a good board against would be red aggro, I think, or most aggro decks that, you know, whenever you swing, you gain life for each elf. That's actually pretty relevant against those decks, but you have to wait a whole turn for that to come around, and sometimes that doesn't happen, especially with Exquisite Firecraft being played in main decks right now, and even Roast being played in some main decks, and pretty much every sideboard that supports red. So she is a lightning rod, but hell, so is every other creature in the deck for that matter. But Dwynen just provides, you know, maximum value, helps us get, again, back in the game and create a long game. Elves has a longer game than we're used to an aggro deck having, you know, it's sort of a mid-range light kind of deck, and these things can really, like, you know, Sylvan Messenger, Den Protector, this can really help you extend the game, provide a lot of reach for you, and really help out a lot. Now on to the spells. We're playing 11 of those. We got 2 copies in the main of Dromoka's Command and the other 2 on the board. The card is that good. Against red aggro, again, a horrible matchup for this. This just does all the things, and is a form of removal for us, and can bust enchantments, which we see a fair amount of, it turns out, in competitive play. So everything about the card is good. We're playing a lot of creatures, and we have access to green and white, so I definitely at least want to play the 2 copies of Dromoka's Command. It is an all-star in the deck, and always finds the right modes. Very good card. 2 copies of Abzan Charm. I at least want to play the 2 copies, right? Helps us against decks that sort of outclass us, you know, go over the top of us. That destroy ability is amazing, or exile ability is amazing. And then the, you know, distribute 2+1/+1 counters is actually really good. It turns out that we do that a lot of the time against some decks, you know. Again, even other mid-range decks, we do that against. Aggro. This is that's a great mode against aggro decks, especially at instant speed. This is very good. Want to play at least the 2 copies of Abzan Charm in the main. This was going to be ultimate price, but Abzan Charm is actually very powerful in this deck. 4 copies of Collected Company right here. This is Coco. I'm in love with the Coco, it turns out. This was not in Green Black Elves, and I caught all the poop for it, it turns out. A lot of people like that. That's actually way far and above our most successful deck tech ever. And thank everybody that watched that. But caught a lot of flack. More dislikes too, but that comes with the territory, I guess. People gave me a lot of crap for not playing Coco, and I can understand why. You know, you guys told me, you're absolutely right. And testing the card has just been unbelievable. It's good with, you know, Elvish Visionary, good with Nissa, good with Shaman of the Pack, you know, so I like the card. It's not good with every single thing in our deck, but our best creatures is very good with. So, and at instant speed, it's just effing crazy. So yes, 4 Coco. 2 copies of Sorin Solemn Visitor, another thing where just everything the card does helps us out tremendously, especially that +1, man. That +1 is crazy. Like, we want to do that pretty much every turn. It's the ability we're going to use with him more often than not. So we've got to play at least one copy, and I'm playing two because you want to see it. I want to see this guy like every single game. And we're playing a fair amount of ramping, and we'll get our drops with Nissa. Well, Leaf Gilder is ramp for us, so I do want to play Sorin. I mean, we'll get to 4. We are playing a fair amount of 4 drops. We'll get to 4 though. Don't worry. Sorin is just that effective in the deck. He's just unbelievable. And to finish the main deck off, save lands, there's one copy, bear with me, of Rally the Ancestors in this deck. Rally the Ancestors is really crazy. I don't know what else to say about this card. There were 2 copies of this in the main deck, but it felt kind of gimmicky at times. But that being said, even though I say it feels gimmicky at times, this card will very often win you the game. The card is that good. You know, you collected company in a couple of things that give you some value, you feel pretty good about that. Well, if you spend 5 to even 6 mana on a rally, which often you'll just spend the 5, and you'll get back, you know, Shaman of the Pack, Dwynen's Elite, sometimes other things, you know, Tin Protector you get back, which kind of sucks. But, you know, you get back your Leaf Gilder. But if you can just get back a fair amount of creatures all at one time in the late game with this, then Shaman of the Pack is going to do a fair amount of damage once it gets its check. So there's that, and you'll get, you know, elves, and you can draw cards, you know, elves off of the Elite, draw cards off of Visionary. So a lot of things that you can do with Rally the Ancestors. Very similar to Collected Company. We saw the Rally deck plays 4 Cocoa, 4 Rally, and I'm just sort of borrowing from that philosophy here. And yes, you will get the 2 white mana, I promise. 23 lands in this here deck, none of which are from Theros block. Like I said, I think this is a pretty effective spread. We don't have too many problems getting anything. You could drop one of the swamps and add a forest. We don't necessarily have problems with green, but green is easily what we need the most in the deck. Although the only reason there's, you know, the extra swamp in there is we need some black sources so we can cast Gnarlroot Trapper on the first turn. That's important too. So that's the reason I did that. Those are the lands, pretty simple. Well, here's the board right here. Something for everybody in the board too. You know, Dromoka's Command, good against red aggro, Duress good against control, and even red aggro, if you're that kind of player, you get the removal out of their hand on the play, which is pretty important for us. For Siege Rhino, because we're playing Abzan, somewhere in the 75 I want to have Siege Rhino. It's just one of the best cards in the format, you gotta have it. Aside from that, Sylvan Messenger helps us, you know, again, recover against removal heavy decks. And Gilt-Leaf Daen again against, you know, other aggro, Abzan Charm. You can see that there's ways that we can either boost our elf strategy, or we can sort of turn into a more mid-rangey Abzan deck out of this sideboard. So I think this is a really cool sideboard. Let me know what you think. There's definitely more that can be done with it. And here are the power rankings. These are the highest power rankings in a while. I have done a fair amount of testing with the deck, and I think these are objective power rankings. 64, the final score, which is actually pretty much where you want to be with a competitive deck. Now, the deck does have its foibles, even though it does have some, you know, recovery. Sylvan Messenger, Din Protector, Collected Company, some other things, Rally the Ancestor. We've tried to do our best to recover against mass removal, but we still have some issues. But our resiliency is higher than the average elf deck by a mile because of some of these changes that we've made here. Mostly the changes have been made to protect our resiliency. We see that we've added Dromoka's Charm against red aggro, which is a bad matchup for us. And we've added things that help us recover against mass removal because, you know, control and things like that that play mass removal, horrible matchup for us. So really helps us out in our worst matchups, and that makes the deck way better. Let me know how you feel about all of these because I feel like I said, I feel like these are objective power rankings. I've played a good bit with the deck at this point, and it's one of my favorite decks I've made in a while. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you know what we're going to do next time. Let me know which one you want more. We can either do a $10 deck tech. It may go slightly above budget, but the $10 deck tech we're finally going to get to is blue-white tutelage. I've actually got a 2-in-1 deck tech for that I'm going to try to do quickly. Blue-white tutelage, mono-blue tutel aggro, which actually plays creatures and stuff. So let me know if you want to see that. And the other thing that I want to build is I finally want to make Alesha. Yeah, some sort of Alesha deck. We'll see. I want to make it Jund to play Collected Company again, but you guys let me know what you want to see. I think Alesha Marauder is really good. Do we want to play green for Collected Company? Probably. But which deck do you want to see more? That's the important part. And yeah, if you enjoyed the content, you know what to do. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I highly recommend that you try this deck out. Proxy it up and play it against your friends, you know, make it go up to F&M. I think the deck is actually very, very competitive and fixes a lot of the problems that Green-Black Elves has. So I'm really interested in how you guys feel about this deck. I like it a lot. I'm Dev from SBMTG. I'll see you later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.